when I found hypnotherapy, I had found the answer I was looking for. It was a way of directly approaching the mind without analysis, without diagnosis, without medication. With hypnotherapy, we can find out what is the real root cause of your blockage, the challenge, whatever you're dealing with. It doesn't really matter what it is. Knowing that the root cause of the problem is the mind, but really the subconscious mind. You give me 10 total hours of work and I'm probably going to change your life, like radically changing things. So yeah, like I know personally and others, like we search for a solution to our problems. And yeah, anybody who's listening, I would say that solution really is right in your face.
I'm Coach Dez, mindset motivator and lifestyle entrepreneur. My mission is to help you crush your self-limiting beliefs and embrace being unapologetically you. The Born Unbreakable podcast brings you inspirational stories from all over the world that will empower you to unlock your unbreakable spirit. I'd love to partner with you on your next breakthrough. Go to bornunbreakable.com to schedule a free transformational call. Action begins today. Are you looking for a one-stop shop in Las Vegas where you can comfortably stay and host an event? Athena Estate is located in Southwest Las Vegas, just 10 minutes from the Strip, and offers everything you need. On over an acre of land, this indoor-outdoor venue is perfect for an intimate retreat, a small wedding, or a milestone birthday. We offer a variety of packages and services that will fit your needs and your budget. Book with us by December 26th and receive 20% off your stay or event. Visit staydorado.com, that's staydorado.com to learn more. We look forward to customizing your next experience. Welcome to the Born Unbreakable podcast. I'm your host, Coach Dez, and I'm very excited about this special guest that I have with me today, Matthew Brownstein, and we're going to delve into a conversation that will start with his spiritual awakening and journey and just the world that he's gotten into today, which has taken some time, but today much of his focus is on hypnotherapy, but there's quite a bit that he studied to get to this point. Everything from Reiki to Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And I was mentioning to Matthew that I recently celebrated a milestone birthday. I just turned 40, and it was just a wonderful time for me to reflect. I was able to spend some quality time and have a lot of fun with family and friends, but really in my self-reflection, it was that I've arrived to a place where I feel a very high degree of gratitude, but also a sense of peace in my life. And I think that it's a noisy world where we can easily be disrupted and oftentimes distracted and maybe even taken off the course away from our core and our North Star of where we might want to go in life. So I'm hoping that you walk away in this episode with some new learnings and perhaps some insights on practices that you could open yourself up to. So Matthew, I appreciate you taking the time despite some of our technical difficulties to be here today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and happy birthday. Since we had to start over again, yeah, I will say again, I just turned 50, and you talked about it being a reflective time for sure. 50 years on the planet made me definitely think, what is it all about here? But yeah, let's dive in. So thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Well, I'd love to start with the beginning of your journey. I know that you've really started delving into things in the early 90s, but it would be awesome to understand how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, happy to share this story. Life didn't mean much of anything to me before I was 19 years old, meaning that it was average, it was normal, it was nothing exciting. But at 19, I had a really profound spiritual awakening. I was lying in bed, I just finished making love with my girlfriend, just to be honest, because that's how the story goes. And out of the blue, for no reason that I understood, it had nothing to do with what we were doing or anything, is it was such a unique experience. Everything went from a world of separation where I'm an individual person to an experience of complete oneness where there's nothing but universe and I'm part of that. It was light, it was love, it was bliss. it was wise. There was wisdom inherent in everything. I was saying words that neither myself or my girlfriend at the time had ever heard me say. She was scared, actually, because I was just speaking from like a radically different worldview that happened in an instant, and I didn't know what happened to me. So I was in college at the time, and I didn't know what to do with that knowledge, but it was so profound. I started asking a lot of questions. I changed my major to philosophy, then to religion. But what I found was, while the religions especially could talk about what had happened to me, they didn't teach me how to tap into it again. It was not until I found mysticism, which are the branches of religion that give you actual techniques to tap into that inner peace, love, joy, or experiences of what you might call divine consciousness. And regardless of what people believe, this is a universal experience that people can have. And it's so life-changing for anybody who's ever tapped into that, that for me, I can only say personally, it just changed everything. So I didn't know what to do with a degree in religion and philosophy. So I went into Chinese medicine thinking, all right, maybe I could clear the blocks to love's presence. Like, there is this love everywhere. There is peace everywhere. But why don't we feel it? And generally what you learn is there are blocks to that. So I thought, okay, maybe acupuncture needles, maybe massage, maybe Reiki could help to clear the blocks. Yet I learned more and more the blocks are mental. It's not that it's not like your cholesterol is blocking you from this. It's like where are the blockages? And it's clearly the problem is the mind. I took a class in college called social problems, and I kept saying, what's the one problem amongst all these problems? And basically it's human beings. And then what is it about human beings? It's the human mind. So I went to different ashrams, monasteries. I lived in the Himalayas in India, really trying to find the answers. And the answers are out there. But I was trying to say, I don't just want to be a monk living in a cave somewhere. I want to be in the world helping people in a way that really feels like it's helping at the highest levels possible. When I found hypnotherapy, I had found the answer I was looking for. It was a way of directly approaching the mind without analysis, without diagnosis, without medication. Beyond traditional talk therapy was getting to the very root of where I had learned human suffering, human challenges come from. I know a lot of your work is working through the negative beliefs, the limiting beliefs that people hold. And that's very much where hypnotherapy just lit up my mind about, oh my God, if somebody believes they're useless, worthless, unlovable, bad, and stupid, there's nothing I can do with an acupuncture needle that's going to change that. And traditional talk therapy, I just wasn't feeling it. But when I found hypnotherapy, I said, this is the path for me. So that's a 30 plus year journey in a nutshell.
That might be the most concise yet detailed explanation, which is really great. Before I get into hypnotherapy, because that's really where I would like to delve in, because I'd imagine that it's not potentially the most familiar topic. I do believe that people have been exposed to maybe talk therapy. It's a bit more common. I think people, there's probably every half the podcast that I listen to, BetterHelp is one of the promotional ads. So there's somebody that you could talk to, call BetterHelp, and you could talk through whatever the challenges that you're dealing with, and it's virtual, so it's easy. Like it's a big thing. I think that's promoted, quite a bit. That's like the modern day thing, is to talk through things, which I certainly feel like there's a lot of value. But I wanted to go back for a second, because you mentioned being in monasteries, being like a monk, going to the Himalayas. What did you learn in those kind of experiences where you really did have more seclusion, more isolation, more quiet? What were the kind of things that you came away with?
I would say I learned absolutely nothing. And what I mean is, when you tap into the type of things that were valuable to me, like universal love, peace, joy, oneness, it's not actually something to learn. It's something we all already know. So my experience of the journey, what they call it, the spiritual path, or just personal growth, it's an unlearning, it's an unraveling, it's a letting go. We all know deep down inside, love is the answer, right? Inner peace is important. Finding what you're looking for within. We all know this already. So I would say I didn't learn or gain anything. In the Heart Sutra in Zen Buddhism, it says no attainment and nothing to attain. So these experiences of awakening that people have, not just me, are realizations of what's actually already there. So I say, if there's anything I learned, which again is something we all already know, is what you're looking for is within, or you are what you're looking for. Peace, love, joy, they're not something you attain someday. You find it now, or you don't find it at all. So really, every meditative discipline led to just be in the present moment, because what you're looking for is really right here now, and that we're not lacking anything valuable. However, we're never really in the present moment, right? Our minds are always in the past or in the future. So yeah, the deepest lesson perhaps is let go of everything else and realize you really are perfect, whole, and complete right in this very moment.
Wow. That's just that alone, I think says so much, because you are right in terms of where we are. I think they say that, when you are in a space of depression, you're going towards the past, and when you're in a state of anxiety, you're going towards the future. And so it's not easy though to feel as if you are not thinking about something and letting that thing from the past hold you back in some way, or being worried about this thing that's potentially going to happen. And so what have you found in your practice that helps people to be present?
Yeah, the desire to do so is really important. I'm a Course in Miracles teacher and student, and in the course it teaches the only role of a good teacher, a real teacher, is to create motivation. So the first thing is, in motivation, have you suffered enough, right? So if you're living in the past and you're depressed, if you're living in the future and you're anxious, hopefully, and unfortunately, but hopefully there's enough suffering in that for somebody who might be listening saying, yeah, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I'm never in the present moment, just to realize that, right? To realize I'm not where I want to be, and yet at the same time, you're right here now. Where else could you be? So again, it comes down to what's the one common denominator to why we're suffering. And when you realize it's not actually what's outside of our skin, it's not the past which doesn't exist or the future which doesn't exist, it's our mind, right? So if you just sit down in meditation, right? So the solution really is learn to meditate. And when you just sit still with your very own body, your own emotions, your own breath, your own mind, you realize you are the problem, right? That your own mind is driving you nuts. Learning what to do with that is really the essence. And for me, it's all about hypnotherapy and meditation. So hypnotherapy helps us to facilitate, to get to the root cause of why the mind just won't be quiet, right? Why it can't stop all that incessant and usually negative chatter. It's very hard with meditation to actually get to the real root cause of that. So between hypnotherapy and meditation, I've found one of the fastest ways to help people to be free of suffering, and just radical miracles is probably the only way you could say it, where you see somebody who's dealing with some illness or major challenge who makes a mental shift, and then everything shifts from that one interchange. So realize the problem is the mind, and then learn really good techniques that work on it. I agree with you, talk therapy has its place, but it doesn't necessarily get, at least not quickly enough and with certain skill sets, to the root cause. And I own and run a hypnotherapy school, and we have psychologists, social workers, mental health counselors go through the training who admit their training is great for what it does, but it just doesn't have the skill sets that we offer in hypnotherapy. So working with a talk therapist who knows hypnotherapy, great, but it's the techniques that get us deep into the subconscious mind that are so important if you don't want to just sit there struggling in meditation or whatever other technique. So get to the root cause, the subconscious in hypnotherapy, and definitely learning a meditation practice. To me, two of the most valuable things I've ever encountered.
That's amazing. So somebody is listening now and going, okay, what exactly is hypnotherapy, and how might I entertain the possibility of learning from it? Let's say there's a person listening. I myself have been there too, where there is some inner struggle. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a career. Maybe it is something you're ruminating on that's hasn't happened yet, but you're thinking about it, something you might want to start, whether it's school or something in a business arena, but something in your mind is going, I don't know what to do. I'm not really sure. I don't know what the answers are, but I'm willing to find ways to get closer to where I can feel peace and I can feel confidence in what I'm doing. If somebody comes to you with those kind of thoughts, where do you begin with hypnotherapy?
Yeah. So first, what is hypnotherapy? We could start there. It's using the hypnotic state, first of all. And anybody who's afraid of that, they can let that go. There's really nothing to be afraid of. It's helping you to get into your own inner reality, right? So simply stated, and this is not a professional level definition, but when you're hypnotized, you're essentially relaxed, receptive, and responsive. So you're just more responsive to suggestions. So basic hypnosis is where it's the hypnotherapist or hypnotist, whatever we call ourselves there, can essentially reprogram your deep inner mind, your subconscious mind. Hypnosis gives us access to that part of your mind. So simply, we could give suggestions and repeat those and get those eventually to where your subconscious gets this new programming to get a much better output. However, hypnotherapy goes deeper, where we're using powerful transformational modalities to transform the subconscious content itself. So let's say when you were 5 years old, or just in your upbringing, you developed a sense of low self-esteem, negative beliefs like I'm not good enough, I'm bad, I'm stupid, I'm unlovable, I'm powerless, I'm helpless, I'm trapped. Those beliefs cause all of our negative emotions, right? So all the hurt and sadness and fear and anger and guilt and all the other branches of those emotions lead to negative behaviors, lead to psychosomatic illness. So really any challenge, like you mentioned the list of relationship difficulties, financial difficulties, it all comes back again to the mind. But not just the thinking mind in your head, that neurotic monkey mind that won't ever be quiet. When we go deep enough, we realize the heart is the root of the mind. So whatever you're feeling, your mind is going to think about, right? You're lonely because you're not in a relationship. The heart feels sad. The mind thinks about what to do. But the conscious mind really can't find a solution to that, because all it's going to try to do in a relationship sense is find a new relationship. But it doesn't know how to, and really can't, heal what's in the heart. With hypnotherapy, we can find out what is the real root cause of your blockage, the challenge, whatever you're dealing with. It doesn't really matter what it is. Knowing that the root cause of the problem is the mind, but really the subconscious mind. In traditional analytical, like Freudian analysis back in the day, they would just analyze that mind. The difference is in hypnotherapy, we talk directly to it. My primary mentor, Mr. Gil Boyne, like great Mr. Gil Boyne, was a giant in our industry. He said hypnotherapy is a therapy for the people, right? So it's not where you have to go and get 8 years of college and get your PhD. It's not necessarily even therapeutic. It's just people helping other people, right? So it's not necessarily, it is its own profession, but we don't consider it to be psychotherapy or psychiatry. It's just a way that good-hearted people can help other people who are struggling, because we have tools to get to the root cause of issues, which don't necessarily require diagnosis or medication. Just like somebody like yourself, a good functioning person who might be having some issues like we all do, hypnotherapy is a way that we can get to the root cause of that and heal that much quicker than anything else that I ever found, honestly.
So if someone comes, which is amazing, because I do think, like you mentioned, the root cause is the thing that if you don't get to, repeats itself. So if you do feel that brokenness and you find this relationship and then that one doesn't work out, then you find this other one and so forth and so on, that root cause may still be there manifesting itself, and you haven't necessarily solved the problem. So if you do start to unravel and uncover that through hypnotherapy, is there, and you're doing that with someone like yourself that's a professional and has tools and techniques, is it possible? Well, one, I guess maybe I start with how long usually does somebody go through this process? And is it possible to sustain the practices without a practitioner like yourself at some point?
Yeah. So what I train my students in is the idea of make you as the professional obsolete in the lives of your clients. So we actually say all hypnosis is self-hypnosis, yet I need to empower you to know how to get into that state. But at the same time, it can be very challenging, if not impossible, to resolve all of your own issues, right? Because you believe what you believe. If you believe that you're unlovable, how do you convince yourself that you're not unlovable, right? But to have a professional facilitator who sees you better than you see yourself, who sees you as perfect, whole, and complete, just won't buy into the personal lies that you might hold about yourself. So how long does it take? I would just say for every issue, give yourself at least one session. But really, if a client comes to me for one issue, I would recommend 3 to 5 sessions. So maybe about 4 sessions. I have a lot of graduates now because we've been running the school for 15 years. So we always have graduates who are willing to work at a reduced rate or a sliding scale. So somebody's hearing this talk and they're really interested, but they're saying, I don't know if I could afford it. Reach out to our school because we absolutely have graduates who are willing to help at a sliding scale or sometimes even for free, if that's what it takes to help people, because we are really in this to be of service to others and the money is secondary. So I would definitely tell your listeners, don't let money get in the way because insurance most likely is not going to pay for this. But yeah, if you're really committed to working through one issue or, a handful of issues, yeah, give it at least one session to feel it out. But there are different modalities. So by giving it 4 sessions, you get to try 4 major hypnotic approaches to resolving the issue. And yeah, I could tell you success story after success story. And usually it's we do 2-hour sessions. That's what I encourage anyway. So it's not like a 7-minute doctor visit or a 50-minute talk therapy session. It's 2 really invested hours in a person's well-being. And you give me 10 total hours of work and I'm probably going to change your life, radically changing things. So yeah, like I know personally and others, like we search for a solution to our problems. And yeah, anybody who's listening, I would say that solution really is right in your face. I couldn't imagine a modality that's more powerful than something that goes right to the root cause of the issue and transforms it without your conscious mind having to get in the way.
Wow. And in my mind, because I'm a person that is a big advocate of self-development and, getting to a place where we have fulfillment, because I do believe that in that state, we can emanate more love. We can be a source of joy and we can bring that into the world. And so I'm hearing you talk going 10 hours of an investment to get to this place where you are operating in a different mindset, in a different state. That seems like a no-brainer. So,
Mm-hmm.
when I think about it in that way, it does make me wonder why we don't hear about hypnotherapy as much. And I'd love your take on this, because when I think about healing, and I would say my journey has been probably the last decade or so, probably almost 15 years of really being open, like very vulnerable, Brene Brown, open to books and experts and really just being in a place of surrender when it comes to this process. And through that journey, it has been predominantly talk therapy and meditation, in the sense of quiet your mind, whether it's putting on something that assists you with that process, or it's you feeling comfortable to take a few minutes or even up to 20 minutes. And so in your assessment, what is the reason that we don't hear as much about hypnotherapy as we do these other practices?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a long story, so I'll give you the short version, but it goes back quite a few hundred years to a man named Franz Anton Mesmer. Right? Many people have heard of mesmerism. So Mesmer was a physician in Vienna and then in Paris, and he had concluded at some point he could take magnets, rub them over people's bodies, and correct imbalances in their, quote, energy flow or the magnetic flow in the body. They didn't quite understand what was going on then, but there was a belief in some invisible force. And that wasn't so crazy because they had just discovered gravity. Ben Franklin had discovered electricity, right? They were like, well, there are these invisible forces, so maybe we could use magnets to rebalance this. But one day Mesmer forgets his magnets, but says, well, maybe the power is in me. So he just used his hands. He got the same results. So he concludes, oh, the animal magnetic force is in me, not in the magnets. He became popular enough that doctors and scientists started studying him. Ben Franklin was actually one of those people. And in the scientific and medical delegation, they concluded Mesmer is not healing through the power of energy or animal magnetism. He's healing through the power of belief, suggestion, and imagination. And then Mesmer really fell out of popular favor. So that was one blow to the mesmeric hypnotic movement. It wasn't until 1864 that Dr. James Braid coined the term hypnosis and said, look, we can make this scientific, but we have to use the power of suggestion as the way we're talking about it, not some imaginary power that could pretty well easily be disproven. They couldn't prove that this power was there. Freud, long story short, Freud picked up the technique of hypnosis and started actually regressing people to the root cause of their problem. So Freud was one of the biggest reasons why we're not using hypnotherapy more mainstream today. That's a complicated story about why, but what he found when he was doing a lot of regressions was that the women he was regressing that were being diagnosed with, quote, hysteria, actually had been sexually abused as children. His colleagues didn't want to hear anything about that. And for other reasons, Freud decided, all right, we're just not going to use hypnosis. But because Freud became the leader of the psychotherapy movement with Freudian analysis, and most practitioners of the time were doing that, and because Freud said, no, we're not going to use hypnosis, it didn't become part of mainstream psychotherapy. Over the years, the profession really has become its own profession because in colleges and universities, you generally need to have scientific-based studies, and hypnotherapy didn't have a lot of science. Now it does. There's a lot more research behind it now. And we're seeing it more and more. But why is it not so popular? It is quite a few hundred years story. All I can say is what we're doing on our end is really working to raise the standards of hypnotherapy training to make it more and more acceptable, credentialed, research, scientific, where we can still keep the deeper spiritual themes that you don't usually get in colleges and universities. Let people fully be themselves in a way where you don't have to leave the spirituality out of it, but in ways where we can still use proven, powerful techniques to help people to change. So I'd like to think it's becoming more mainstream, but based on your question and me being in the field for 25 years, maybe not as much, but I'm doing everything I can to get the word out there for sure.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate the history and understanding, and I hope, well, it's one of those things where it's like when you start saying, oh, a yellow car, then all of a sudden you start seeing yellow cars. I'm hoping that me talking about hypnotherapy and having it in my mind, there's maybe you find it more when you heighten your awareness. Sometimes I find that when I'm kind of on a subject, suddenly I see it pop up in an article or somewhere, but perhaps it's related to exposure or just a heightened sense of awareness. So I hope that in this case, but what would you say educationally for a person who's still maybe wants to understand hypnotherapy, you know, short of just Googling it, which I think is probably what we all do, are there sources that you might recommend? I know you have a website and that could be one place to start, but I'd love to get your feedback on that.
Yeah, well, being a leader in the field, I would recommend us, and I'll say why. So instituteofhypnotherapy.com, we track all of the state laws. We have very high ethical standards. So there's two ways to approach it. If you're already in a caregiving profession, then let's say you are a doctor, psychologist, mental health counselor, then hypnotherapy becomes an adjunct to your practice and you're using it in a therapeutic context. However, this is its own profession, yet people who don't have those type of credentials, you don't need any prior degrees, but you might be limited to what you can work on. So there's therapeutic and non-therapeutic hypnosis. And we've made it really clear going through our training. You want to get at least 500 hours of training through a state licensed school. You shouldn't just do like a weekend workshop by somebody who's not licensed by the Department of Education, because there are laws in this profession. You have to, because it's a profession through the Department of Labor, a school needs to be licensed by the Department of Education to actually deliver career training in the field. So be sure you're looking into state licensed schools. Be sure you're getting at least 500 hours of training. And then, yes, be sure you're trained in the law and ethics, advertising and marketing, business and practice management. So, look for a really robust training. You can't just do, 100-hour training and think you can be a professional in this field. And then again, really understand the law, because there's a therapeutic uses, and then there's plenty of non-therapeutic uses. If I'm not a medical doctor or psychologist, if I'm going to work on a therapeutic condition under Florida law, which is one of the clearest laws that we recommend our students abide by, if I'm going to work in a medical condition, I just get a referral from the person's doctor. So if somebody calls me and says, can you help me with my migraines? Yes, but I need your doctor to refer you to be sure there's not a brain tumor, right? So if we're dealing with a medical condition, we just get a referral. If it's a mental health condition, we might not touch it at all because it's not necessarily our field. But if we did, it would be in coordination with the person's therapist to say, yes, it's safe to use hypnosis. So be sure anybody who's looking into this is trained in that, because you could end up seriously breaking the law if you're practicing medicine or psychology without a license. It goes with dentistry or working with pain as well. Hypnosis is great for all of the above: medical, mental health, dental, pain management. But quite often on the clinical medical level of things, we're working in coordination with other professionals to be sure we're under HIPAA compliance. That's important. You start working with the patient by refer to their physician, but you disclose their personal information, again, you get in big trouble. So get really good training, know the difference between therapeutic and non-therapeutic, and definitely look for state licensed schools offering a minimum of 500 hours of training.
Well, that's great. It's really good to know, because I do think it's important with so much information that you can get on the internet to know the difference between credentialed, qualified practitioners and schools. So you really do get the best of the best if you're going to delve in this from either a professional perspective or someone who is just seeking professional assistance as a complement to what you may have already begun, like we've talked about, traditional therapy, acupuncture, anything else. But I'm curious, I know we only have a few minutes left, just about you personally. So I know you mentioned at 19, that is really where you had this epiphany, and you have been ever since then, learning and unlearning, like you mentioned, some different things. Since I do talk to people often about their self-limiting beliefs, I'm curious if you have had a self-limiting belief at one point. What was that, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, it wasn't just one. I can humbly say, over the years of working with clients, I have or at least had every single negative belief that anyone else has ever had. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Like when I would hear clients say they're unworthy, like, what do you mean unworthy? I don't feel unworthy. But then when I would search deep enough, I'm like, oh, I could see how I have the flavor of it. Unlovable. Oh, I see how I could feel unlovable. Like, you name it. And I could go through that whole list. I think I did it a little bit already in this interview. Like, I'm bad, I'm stupid, I'm powerless, I'm helpless, I'm trapped. I can honestly relate to every single belief every person has ever had, because I've looked at every aspect of my psyche. In hypnotherapy, we do past life regression work. Whether you believe it's actual past lives or not, you bring out what appear to be these past life personalities. Like, there was me when I lived 500 years ago. And, even if that didn't happen, well, what was that storyline that came out? I have seen every negative aspect of the human condition in my own psyche. So in past lives, I've raped and I've been raped. I've murdered and I've been murdered. So when you explore the psyche enough, you get off your high pedestal of I'm so perfect and holy and I'm healed and I don't have issues, as really getting down to I have the same pain and the same suffering, the same challenges as everyone else. Maybe not the same degree, but I could relate. Personally, for me, just to be not as abstract, to be a bit more vulnerable, as you said, I would say anxiety was definitely my challenge. I would just feel anxious. And what was really underneath all of that? Yeah, sense of self-worth. Before I woke up spiritually, I didn't feel like there was much self-worth. Like, who am I? Why am I here? Why am I important? Why am I valuable? As soon as I get tapped in deeper to who am I really, then I started seeing all the old beliefs and emotions and negative behaviors, anxious feelings, whatnot, dropping away because of waking up to who I truly am. But yeah, I could relate to anybody with any of their issues and say, oh yeah, I felt that to some degree for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that is really honest. Because I think if we are being honest, we probably have gone through somewhat of a gamut of that at different points of our lives, a few different self-limiting beliefs. If you had to give anyone listening a last piece of advice, what would it be?
Whenever I'm on podcasts and I'm asked this question, I always go back to what my first philosophy teacher said to me when I just graduated his class. And I said, "Thank you so much. You really opened my mind, changed my life," or those type of sentiments. He said, "Good, stay on the path." It was just those 4 words, stay on the path. And over, now being 50 years old and being in this field for 25, 30 years, I have seen that we all have a path, we all have a mission, we all have a purpose. So despite my talking about there's peace, there's joy, there's love, there's bliss, there's a state of oneness, there's also a mission and a purpose for what we're meant to do. You found your path with Born Unbreakable. And, I'm sure you can relate personally to, you find your groove. And what I found is find that groove. So first of all, find out who you are, find out what you're meant to do in this planet. But then once you find that, stick to it. Don't try any other career. Don't try to make money in other ways. In A Course in Miracles, these are called useless journeys. If you're on the planet to do one thing, do that one thing and do it really well. So in Hinduism, they call it your dharma. In the Bhagavad Gita, one of the Hindu scriptures says, it's better to do your dharma poorly than to do someone else's dharma well. So just even if you're a C student with your own dharma, at least you're doing what you're here to do. And then you can keep improving, getting better at it, but stay on the path. If not, it's going to lead to some form of suffering that's completely unnecessary.
Yeah. I remember the Bhagavad Gita from college, taking me back to my college days there. Heard that in a while. Matthew, what is the best way for people to reach you? And is there any kind of programs at all that you want to promote or mention before we close up today?
Everything. So our hypnotherapy training, which is my main thing, is instituteofhypnotherapy.com. And then I also offer a completely free online meditation system training at onlinemonastery.com. That's one of my other side projects. It's over 100 hours of free meditation training. It's a very deep system, but even the basics are a really good way to get started. I'm not personally that available for private sessions anymore. It's not impossible, but I usually just refer to my higher level graduates. But for those interested in learning more about the field of hypnotherapy, definitely check out instituteofhypnotherapy.com.
That's awesome. I will be sure to put all of those links in the show notes so people can explore more. But this is at least an introduction, if you will, for those, and maybe a refresher for those who have had exposure and, want to revisit some of those techniques in their own journey of where they are today. So I just want to thank you for the education, your honesty and vulnerability. And I look forward to exploring more myself. So I really appreciate your time.
Nice. Thank you for having me on, Des. I appreciate you and what you're doing.
Awesome. Episode 140 with hypnotherapist Matthew Brownstein. I didn't mention this at the beginning of the episode, but Matthew has unbelievable credentials and accolades. We were on a schedule, so I didn't want to take too long up front, but I did want to just mention that he is the CEO and founder of Anahat Education Group. He's the executive director for the Institute of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, the president of International Association of Interpersonal Hypnotherapy, and a whole slew of other things that I could probably spend at least the next 5 minutes reading off, which I won't. But it's all of that is to say how much devotion and dedication that he's put into this practice that I honestly do feel, and maybe that's just me. Anybody who's listening can correct me if they somehow are been having much more exposure than me, but I feel it is something that is not as utilized, not as promoted as other sources of therapeutic methods. I was talking to him about talk therapy obviously has had its place for very long. Every time I listen to a podcast, they're probably on a daily basis, I hear an ad for BetterHelp, for talk-related therapy. I'm always seeing different mindfulness and meditation apps come out. I have heard more through podcast guests about neuro-linguistic programming, and he actually has a background in that as well. Chinese medicine, but I'm fascinated. I really am. I'm fascinated by this concept of hypnotherapy and what it can do. And like I mentioned, just for a small investment for something that may change your life forever, if it gets to the root cause of those negative beliefs that you have about yourself and how you're moving in this world, imagine how it may change your personal relationships, your career, your business endeavors, your own spiritual journey, your social life. I mean, there's so many dimensions I think we may feel paralyzed in, and it could just be a consideration for you to explore hypnotherapy a little bit further. So I hope that you at least entertain that today, if this is the very first time that you're hearing more about it. But it seems to be very powerful, and I personally would love to delve into it more. I really do think it can possibly open up some things for me and get even deeper than practices that I've already pursued. But lastly, I just want to reflect a little bit. As I've mentioned, I had the most absolute epic, marvelous, phenomenal, sensational birthday celebration. I hadn't really had anything big and major since I was a teenager, and I just had the most. I'm reeling over the experience that I had getting together with family and friends and just putting on something that was so cool, not so much for me, but for other people, to bring them into a space where they can see performances and spend some really quality, fun time with me and catch up and reminisce. And it had been many years since I've been able to spend that kind of time with some of my friends and loved ones. And so I just am in so much gratitude right now. As you can see, if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, I am wearing one of my old school 49ers jackets today. I'm into football. That is what I grew up on. It is the one sport that I have a lot of passion behind watching. I'm a 49ers fan, and we beat the Cowboys, and that made me very happy. So that happened in the recent game. We're going on to play the Eagles, so that will be very interesting. They've had an excellent season, as you know. And we are on the road to the Super Bowl. It's now the divisional championships, and the Niners have had some wonderful years of making it far, but not far enough to be in the Super Bowl. We've had made it to the Super Bowl a couple of times in recent years, but did not win the title. So we are looking for Title 6, and this could be the year. You never know. It is possible. Anything's possible, right? So I am in the present moment, and that is where I am right now. And I do just want to mention that. And in all honesty, transparency, and compassion, I understand what it's like to possibly feel depressed or anxious. I've had those moments myself, and I know sometimes it feels dark and dreary and lonely and frustrating. And so, maybe even if it isn't hypnotherapy at the moment, do find something that works for you to do the best you can to come to the present moment. I think it makes a big difference if we find those practices that enable us to do that, so we can have more moments of peace and joy and love, all of those things that Matthew was talking about today. So I really, truly do hope that for you. If coaching is an avenue that you feel could work for you, my focus is helping people to overcome their self-limiting beliefs. I am passionate about that. I have been for a long time. When I work with people, it really is on manifesting more of what you want in your life. So being able to surrender to the things that are no longer present, yet we hold on to, trauma, things like that. So I am not a therapist. I am not going to be the person that works with you through those past issues. I certainly could refer you to somebody who could help you, but my focus is more on what you want in your future. So just a little bit of education there on the distinction between a therapist and a coach. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope your 2023 has been amazing as we are nearing the close of the first month of the year. Make sure to give yourself that sense of empowerment by embracing exactly who you are, loving the person that you are becoming, and emanating that sense of love and joy in the world to the others around you. Remember that you are your only limit, so take action today, and I will see you on the next episode of the Born Unbreakable podcast. Be sure to share if you haven't already. Rate and review that too.